What's up, goblins, and welcome to my little guide video in Dwarves, Glory, Death, and Loot. Today I want to show you how to defeat every boss, from the first cave troll until the last dragon in this game. And to do that, I will show you all of my equipment parts, I will show you my loadout, my lineup, my artifacts, everything you need to know. In addition to that, I will also have a detailed look on my Rune Circle with you. And of course, I will also give you some general tips and tricks at hand so that you are also able to defeat each of these bosses. Let's go! I want to start by talking about your lineup in general. So how do you build a very strong lineup against boss monsters? There are three very simple key roles you need to fulfill in order to succeed in defeating every boss. So the first role you need to have in your clan is a very durable tank. This can either be by high HP. Very good example is here the Beastmaster or even the Paladin. They are very durable because they have a very high HP pool they can tank from. And this is always good against every kind of damage source, of course. The next tank you can use is not by high HP, but rather by a very high block chance. So dwarves with a shield. Again, paladins or knights are a good pick here. Also, a nice upside of paladins and knights is they are usually very, very heavy in weight, which means they have a very big pushback force also against normal orcs, not only against bosses but also against normal orcs, and this will also help you to keep your backline out of trouble, especially in casual fights. And the next more unusual kind of tank is, I'd say, a thief, because thieves do have mediocre HP usually, but they come with a very high dodge chance, and of course just to negate damage by dodge is also a good way to prevent damage from your backline. The second key role you need in your clan are healers. Of course, boss monsters do a tremendous amount of damage and thus you need extremely fast HP regeneration. This can either be achieved by healing your dwarves directly, for example with priests or supporters, both classes very powerful healers, or you can also heal your dwarves indirectly. This is a little bit more complex. For example, you can heal your dwarves via artifacts with the Ring of Restoration, which gives you HP regeneration passive. Or you can also upgrade your gear to Mythic Plus grade. There's a Mythic Plus grade which also grants you HP regeneration. Or there are multiple runes playing around HP regeneration. For example, HP regeneration on activating ultimate. Or there's also a rune that lets you steal life from your enemies when they are bleeding. And so there are many ways in how to heal up your dwarves to achieve the required HP regeneration rate. And of course we have to take down our enemy in some way, and that's why we need as a third key class a damage dealer. Exactly, good damage dealers are, for example, cannoneers. They are excellent damage dealers, especially if you combine them with a prodigy veteran trait. Wow, absolutely insane. Another good choice is, for example, mages. Just a casual mage with electric stuff already does a lot of damage. The only problem we have is that bosses do tend to have very high thunder resistance. So you have to level up your dwarf accordingly to keep up with this resistance. But as I said, thunder mages are also a very good choice. The next good choice is probably the champion dwarf, exactly. So there's a fire mage champion dwarf coming at around 100, and this one is also a very, very potent damage dealer. Of course, you can also combine these damage sources, but those three are my personal favorites. Alright, now that we know everything about our lineup in general, I want to take you with me on my very long journey on how to defeat every boss, and we will start by having a look on my Rune Circle. Let's go! When it comes to boss battles, working with and completely understanding your Rune Circle is an absolute necessity. So if you're not too familiar with this topic here yet, I will also put you a link to my Rune Circle guide in my description down below. Okay, and this, what you can see here in the background, is my original Rune Circle from my boss run. And actually, this Rune Circle stayed pretty much the same from round 1 until round 800, where I died against the Forge Demon. And there are some things I want to point out here. So first, we start by having a look on our damage runes. I have a lot of here general damage runes. Here we have increased crit damage, we have additional damage, we have more additional damage, and then some additional crit chance. What we also notice here is that I do not use the general rune, the general Wrath rune. I use the rune for physical damage because our main output was always, or damage output was always from physical sources. You will see this in my run later, and that's why I took these physical runes, because if we compare them, they are a lot stronger. So the normal Wrath rune for everyone gives only +4 additional damage, but the physical rune grants us stunning 8% additional damage on this tier level. And this is the same with all of these runes. So whenever you have a main damage source, do not pick, this is a very important tip, do not pick the normal overall rune, rather pick the one you are looking for. For example, physical damage, thunder damage, fire damage, and so on. There you can enhance either damage types, or you can also enhance single classes, for example, warriors, mages, whatever you have as your main damage dealer. This is most likely more worth it than to go for your runes in general. Okay, but I also have some very important damage runes here that do not necessarily play around pure damage. So we have first the Crown of Thorns. I played a lot around Thorns, and the Crown of Thorns is very powerful if you have very strong tanks with a lot of thorns, because this makes your dwarves output thorns, emit thorns, 400% of the damage they have every 4 to 5 seconds, and this deals a lot of AoE damage and also causes bleeding in an area. This is very good if you play, for example, Beastmasters. Why is it good with Beastmasters? And by the way, I also have 2 Beastmasters in my lineup. So why is this good for Beastmasters? Because Beastmasters also pass their items and their stats to their boars. They have an item called Summon, and this summons a boar. And all stats and all items the Beastmaster inherits also goes over to the boar. And this means if your Beastmaster has an item with thorns, these thorns will also transit to your boar. And if you have multiple boars plus your Beastmasters, you have a lot of damage output just from all of these thorns. You, you transfer over to all of your boars. So this is crazy, crazy good, I can tell you. And then the second rune we have here is the Parabellum rune. I use this rune because I have a Cannoneer also as a main damage dealer in my lineup. And this Parabellum rune is very good, not necessarily against boss monsters. Against some of them, yes, but not necessarily against bosses. More against casual orcs, because this makes your Cannoneer have a pierce chance, which means he can do a lot more damage. And just to give you some numbers here, my Cannoneer had at the end of my run at round 800, 2,600 dexterity, which means he had a damage output of 4,000 per bullet, which is, of course, insane. And this combined with the Parabellum rune was absolutely able to annihilate the whole orc lineup alone already, especially in combination with this Crown of Thorns we have down here. Okay, that's everything I wanted to say about the damage runes. Now, the next rune class we have, of course, is our ultimate rune class. And here we already see one rune that I already told you is very good. So this rune is called Hope, and it restores maximum HP after using an ultimate. This is meant to support my healers and also to support my backline in healing, because I had supporters which are not necessarily the most powerful healers, but you will see that also supporters can do a lot of healing power here. But this was to support my lineup just in general. I also had some attack up buffs, which just grants you more plain damage whenever you activate your ultimate. And on top of that, where was it? Here, this is attack up. There. I also had the Plea rune. So this works around holy HP regeneration, and it applies a shield based on 200% of wisdom to an ally when using an ultimate, which is very good for my supporters. So I was also able to utilize this one. Then the third rune class here are your defensive runes. And here I have mostly resistance runes. So mostly all of my runes are resistance runes. This is also a very good tip in general. Whenever you encounter a boss, you don't have to go into this battle blind. You can see basically everything from this boss. You can see his stats. You can see all of his actions he can do, you can see all of his resistances. And so if you have a closer look on the boss, you can already set up your Rune Circle before this boss fight just to match, for example, this boss's element. If you have, for example, if you fight a spider, they have as their main damage element physical. So whenever I encountered a spider, I changed all of my resistance runes here to physical, exactly. And this is, of course, something you can do against every boss, and this just gives you a lot better options against them. But I also had some other runes here, which was, or actually only one rune, the Thorn Ward rune. This also plays around thorns. As I said, I had a lot of dwarves utilizing thorns. And with this rune, whenever you make damage to an attacker, it also grants you a shield for the thorns amount. This is especially good if you fight with your Beastmasters with this Crown of Thorns combination. So this is also very powerful and gives you a lot more healing, you can say, or support for your frontliners. Okay, last rune class we have here are our support runes, and they are just very common. I have some more gold here, some chance to acquire loot, and then more chance to acquire mithril. And the probably most interesting one is this combination here. Increases chance to encounter treasure cards. This is very, very good if you want to upgrade your gear fast. So encounter treasure cards is very powerful, and I strongly recommend to at least take one of these runes here, because treasure cards have a very good chance to give you higher graded mithril, for example, legendary or even mythic mithril, and this will help you in the long term a lot. Trust me. Okay, that's it from my Rune Circle. I'd say we now jump over to the first boss, which I defeated in round 50. Let's go. This is the exact formation I had right before I defeated the first boss, the Cave Troll. We are now at 50 victories, and while our artifacts and our equipment parts in general are still a pretty huge mess, we can already see the main idea of this build. So, as heavy tanks, I have in my front line 2 Beastmasters, and to support them, I also decided to take some more Thieves in here. Right now we have 4 Thieves, but I will swap one of them out later against a Champion Dwarf. As a damage dealer, I decided to take the Cannoneer because, as I said, the Cannoneer is one of the greatest damage dealers in this game, I know. And as healers, I have 3 supporters here. So with this lineup, I was aiming for 4 different formations. The first one is the Bannerlords formation. This is already active. It activates if you have 3 or more banner wielders or supporters in your clan. And this grants your supporters the ability to heal on activation of their ultimate. So every time a supporter activates their ultimate, they heal every clan member for 10% of their max HP. The second formation I was aiming for is the Pack of Thieves. This is also already active here. It activates with 3 or more thieves in your clan, and it increases the maximum stack you can have on an enemy on poison, while also increasing the damage output from stacks of poison. The third formation I was aiming for is the Bloodhunters formation. This is very strong. It is not active yet. I will tell you when it is active, but it is not active yet because you need at least 80% of your dwarves in your clan with the ability to cause bleeding, which right now is not the case. So it's inactive, but this is very strong because it grants you 30% more damage against bleeding targets. In addition to that, it also adds 10% life steal for bleeding targets. And if that wasn't enough, it also grants you a 100% chance to remove a debuff on ultimate effect. So the Bloodhunters formation is very, very powerful. The next formation I was aiming for is the Bludgeon Company. This one is also extremely good in terms of damage because the Bludgeon Company activates whenever you have 5 or more dwarves in your clan using the physical element, and the Bludgeon Company lets you make more damage the less HP your enemy has. So the damage scales with missing HP, which is extremely good, especially in longer boss fights. Now that we know more about the main idea of my lineup, I want to show you the Cave Troll itself. So the Cave Troll unlocks after 50 victories. He's considered a warrior. using the physical element. That's why I changed all of my runes, of course, back to physical resistance. Exactly. Other than that, the Cave Troll is not a very impressive enemy as a boss, so he comes in with 2000 stamina, which equals 20,000 HP, and throughout your runs you will most probably, even without any proper preparation, be able to defeat this Cave Troll. I'd say I will now show you the clip how I defeated him. We are now 51 victories later and standing right in front of the second boss, the Mountain Troll. And we can already see quite some changes here. So first of all, I decided to equip Hearts of Iron to my front line so that they cannot get too much damage in one single hit. Also, I changed the loadout from my Thieves to the White Reaver set, granting them a chance to cause bleeding as well as a chance to cause a blood explosion. This is very good for our Blood Hunters formation, even though this Blood Hunters formation is not in effect yet because we only have 6 instead of 8 required dwarves who can cause bleeding. But now comes the most noticeable change. We have 2 veteran dwarves in our clan now. The first one is Thoradin Stormforged, our new champion we got at 100 victories. And I decided to pick him not so much as a damage dealer, more as a supporter. Because Thoradin is able to apply the pinned effect, which immobilizes enemies completely, as well as lowers their dodge chance. And this will become a lot more important later for other bosses. I will talk about that in detail later. The second change here we have in personnel is our Cannoneer. Yes, I was very lucky and I found early a Cannoneer with the trait Prodigy. And the Prodigy trait is absolutely insane on the Cannoneer. So the Prodigy trait reads as follows. Gain double the stats according to profession level every 4 levels. This already is very good because the Cannoneer's damage scales with dexterity, and a Cannoneer gains on level up dexterity, which means with this trait alone he already gets a lot better damage output. And on top of that, and this is the interesting part, the stat increase is additionally applied if the dwarf has the most kills after battle. And since our Cannoneer is our biggest damage dealer in this clan, he will most likely also deal the most damage and thus also gets the most kills, which means he will benefit from this Prodigy trait a lot. And as I said, I will end up with this one Cannoneer at 2600 dexterity at the end of this run, which is absolutely insane. Okay, one minor change I also made for my backline is I swapped out their banners. They're not blue now. You can see I have banner of, I think it's called Encouragement. And this banner of Encouragement is very good because on ultimate use, it does remove stacks of debuffs on all of your dwarves. So this is also very powerful if you want to prevent your dwarves from stacking up too many debuffs. I'd say that's it from my lineup in round 101. Now let's go over and have a look on the second boss. The second boss is pretty much a copy of the first boss, just with enhanced stats. As you can see here, he is also considered a warrior, also utilizing the physical element, and he even comes in with basically the same abilities. So all trolls are able to regenerate health. That's why also the bleeding effect is so good against them, because bleeding lowers the amount of health regeneration. On top of that, they are also able to apply Feared to all of your dwarves and activate Nightmare if your dwarves have too many fear stacks and dealing some damage to them in return. But I'd say let's have a look on this in action. Again, 50 rounds later, we are now finally standing right in front of the third and last troll boss, the Forest Trolls. So the Forest Trolls are pretty much the same as the trolls we already encountered before. They have the same abilities with one difference. Now it's 2 trolls, not only 1. And of course, they also have increased base stats. Okay, so in terms of our lineup, we did make some huge changes here. First, let's have a look on our artifacts. I granted for this fight the gloves for my backliners. The gloves are great for backliners because they increase range for ranged weapons, as well as giving your backliners jump back distance whenever the enemy comes too close. This is super good for your backliners. Okay, the second thing we notice here is that I equipped thorn mails to my supporters, and thorn mails are very good in multiple ways for us here. Because first, thorn mails, of course, as the name says, they emit thorns, which then also causes bleeding. So now at this point, our Blood Hunters formation is finally coming into effect because we have enough dwarves who can cause bleeding. And in addition to that, our thorn mail also increases our maximum HP. And this, of course, is very good because if you remember the Bannerlord's formation, this means that our supporters can heal more by activating their ultimate. So this is very good in multiple ways for us. The second big change here that we can see is that we have a lot more veteran dwarves. And I think this is the perfect time to talk about veteran dwarf traits in general. So which traits do you want to have for your own lineup? There's one trait that is always very nice to have, and that's the sharp trait. The sharp trait increases critical hit chance by 10%, but not only that, it also grants you execution for targets below 10% HP if you crit them, which is absolutely insane, especially against bosses, because this also works fully against bosses, sparing you a lot of time and a lot of fighting. The next trait I like to have, especially for my frontliners, is in this case fast reflexes. Very good in combination with thieves because they already work around dodge, and fast reflexes gives better dodge chances. Then the next trait you could pick, it's not necessarily good in this case, but if you have shielded dwarves, for example, knights or paladins, is increasing the block chance. There's a trait which increases block chance by 10%. Of course, this is just overall good if you have shielded troops. And one more trait I really like to see on my frontliners, the Agile trait, because the Agile trait increases attack speed as well as giving you a 20% chance to do double amount of damage or double amount of healing, which also means that the Agile trait is a very viable trait for healers in the backline. Okay, in terms of backliners, especially for the cannoneer, I just love, as I already said, to take the Prodigy trait, but this of course works for every major damage dealer as well. So the Prodigy trait, as I already said, lets you scale enormously with your weapon class, and thus creating a very, very strong damage dealer. Another trait that is very good for the backline, especially for your healers, is the Wise trait. The Wise trait gives you increased mana regeneration, and it even decreases the cost on ultimate activation. So the Wise trait is very good on dwarves who have a very expensive ultimate activation. The last minor change I want to talk about here is the passive of our Beastmasters, because the passive of our Beastmasters is decided by the offhand gear they wear. And this is very interesting because the offhand gear, if you buy it in the shop, is randomly chosen out of a certain set of traits. And in this case, we are aiming for both Beastmasters for the Thorn trait, which grants us 15% of the Beastmaster's max HP as thorns against melee attackers, working perfectly together with our Thorn mates that we already have, and of course also with the rune set I already showed you earlier. I'd say that's everything I wanted to show you here. Let's hop into the next clip. Change the next boss after 190 victories, and this boss requires a slight strategy shift. Why is that so? So let's have a look on the boss itself first. The Black Widow. Yes, the first spider boss. We are done with troll bosses. Now comes the spider part. And the Black Widow is already the first thing we notice here is considered a thief and not a warrior anymore. So why is this a problem for us? The problem with thieves is they have a very high dodge chance, and the Black Widow also gains a lot of jump back distance whenever she gets attacked after falling below 50% HP. And this is a huge problem for us because this delays the match after the 3-minute mark. And why is the 3-minute mark so important for boss fights? The 3-minute mark for boss fights is so important because after that time, every boss in this game starts to scale their damage over time, within a few seconds even. And not only that, but also after the 3-minute mark, your dwarves are not able to heal themselves anymore. No supporters, no druid, no self-healing activated, and that means, of course, this combination of no healing available plus steadily rising damage is absolutely devastating to your lineup. That's why you have to end every fight within 3 minutes against bosses. And so in this case, this is a huge problem for us because the spider has a lot of dodge and also on the other hand, a lot of jump back distance, which just delays all of this fight after the 3-minute mark. So we have to deal with this. So let's go back to our formation here. And my way to deal with this was that we absolutely need the hold the line formation. So what does this do? This prevents all of your dwarves to go further than the 0 meters mark, preventing our frontliners to all the time rush this spider and thus pushing her away further and further from our backliners. Also, it gives us increased range for our backliners, making it easier for them to hit the spider more often, even if she gets pushed back. And on top of that, it even grants us more physical resistance for everyone, which is just nice overall because the spider itself also has the element physical, right? Okay, so, and to strengthen this, I also equipped here my gloves on my backliners, of course, again, to increase jump back distance whenever they're attacking and also to increase their range. Also, I gave them some damage items here, the Orb of Mana for my archer and then the Razor Blade ring for more crit damage and crit chance for my cannoneer. The rest of this is pretty much the same. We have some frontliners here, all with Hearts of Iron, except for our Centurion, who still has his Thorn Mail, and then the backline is also pretty much the same. I'd say let's go into the game and then you will definitely see what I mean. This jump back distance is a real problem. Let's go. Only 26 victories later, I already decided to fight the next boss, the Shadow Twins. This time we have to fight 2 spiders, and they are pretty similar compared to the Black Widow. So the Shadow Twins are also thieves. They also have the main element physical. They also work around poison, and they also gain jump back distance and a lot of dodge once they drop below 50% HP. But this time we have a big advantage. So our complete lineup remains mostly the same. But the big advantage this time is we have a new artifact. The artifact that got dropped from the Black Widow itself. The spider item. The spider idol lower half. That's how it's called. And this item is extremely powerful because it is able to apply the pinned effect. And the pinned effect completely disables movement as well as reducing dodge rate. So this is the perfect counter against the Shadow Twins or against thieves in general. And this gets even supported with our archer. Remember, Thoradin also has a chance to apply the pinned effect on his ultimate. So I'd say let's have a look on the clip. You will see at some point that the Shadow Twins are nearly immovable and not able to reach us at all anymore. Round 251, and we are standing right in front of the 6th boss. This time we have to face not 2 but 3 spiders, the Venomous Trinity, and so our core strategy remains the same. We still have thieves as enemies, they still have jump back distance after 50% health, and so we still have our spider idol on our cannoneer, we still have our archer to support with our pin, and everything else pretty much remains the same except for some extra upgrades. You see some very shiny, nice, golden, legendary artifacts and equipment parts here already, and on top of that, the only real change I made here was in the Rune Circle. I also went for some poison resistance because the Venomous Trinity does a lot of poison damage. I think that's all I want to say here about the Venomous Trinity. Let's hop immediately into the clip. With all spider bosses defeated, we now have to face the last enemy class for today, the dragons. Namely, the next one is the Flame Wyvern. And you can already notice that we made quite some changes here to our loadout again, especially to our artifacts. So we do equip, mostly all of my dwarves are equipped with holy crystals here. So why is that so? Let's have a look on the Flame Wyvern itself. So if we have a look here, right on top, you can already see the Flame Wyvern is considered a mage with the element fire. And this already is the reason why we have so many crystals here. Holy crystals are able to store received magic damage and then output this as HP regeneration burst. And this will absolutely boost health regeneration for our frontline. You will see this in the video that we barely drop below 20% HP on any of our dwarves. And that's also the reason why I equipped this Heart of Iron to my backliner here, to my cannoneer, because I wasn't sure if he's able to withstand all of this damage even with a Holy Crystal, because at this time he had very low stamina and the outburst of the Holy Crystal does not scale with the received damage, but rather with the HP of the wearer of the crystal. That's why I decided to give him this one Heart of Iron. But probably he would have also survived if I gave him some damage item like the Orb of Mana or the Razor Blade Ring again. Okay, one more thing I changed here, which is not obvious, and that's on the cannoneer again himself. His shoulder part. The great thing we haven't covered yet about the cannoneer is that he has a very similar mechanic to the Beastmasters. Remember, the Beastmasters passive is decided by their offhand gear, and it's a random passive. The same applies for this cannoneer here, just with its shoulder part this time. So if you have different shoulder parts, you can also give him different effects. And in this case, I gave my cannoneer's shoulder parts, which convert his usually physical damage into ice damage. And this is especially good against this Flame Wyvern because the Flame Wyvern has very, very little ice resistance. So we have a big weakness here in terms of ice damage. That's why I gave my Cannoneer these shoulders. This will become a lot more important, especially in the next fight. And I'd say we jump now into the clip. Just look on all of these holy explosions you'll see there. This is really great. After 351 victories, we are finally ready to face the next Wyvern, the Ice Wyvern. This Ice Wyvern is considered a mage with the element ice, and you can already see on our lineup here that we basically have the same strategy as before. We have lots of holy crystals. Everything is now also upgraded to at least legendary quality, and there are some things I have to point out here. First of all, I gave some damage items this time to my backliners. Secondly, I also upgraded the weapons of my backliners to Mythic plus quality, which means I was able to give them 25% increased range, which of course is a very powerful upgrade for backliners. And in addition to that, I also changed again the shoulder part on my dwarf, converting all of his damage into fire damage while also improving his rate of fire by stunning 25%. So changing the shoulders is not only good to convert the element of your dwarf into something else, but also to play around with your shooting mechanics. And I'd say, let's see this in action. now at round 404, we are finally ready to face the final boss for today, the Storm Wyvern. So the Storm Wyvern is also, like all other dragons, considered a mage, and it utilizes the element thunder. And because it's a very tough dragon, I had to change my strategy again here a little bit. So let's have a look on this. Okay. First of all, what you notice is that we use a lot less holy crystals. I do have some holy crystals on my Beastmasters though, combined with a ring of thunder. This is a very great combination because the holy crystal, of course, as always converts his magic damage into healing, while the ring of thunder gives my Beastmasters great thunder resistance and also attracts some of the enemy's thunder strikes, which is very good here. On top of that, I also gave some more thorn mails for my backline, and I have another change here in my backline, and that's, you can see here in the middle supporter now wields a blue banner, and this banner increases speed as well as attack speed by 25%, and this is very, very important for my front line. This is also in combination with my other change that you can see here. We see that our thieves for now are gone, and that I decided to take Bastion Shields instead of my Thieves, because the Bastion Shields are able to completely annihilate any kind of projectile for 3 seconds after ultimate use. And that was the biggest problem with the Storm Wyvern, because the Storm Wyvern is shooting tornadoes every few seconds when you attack him in close combat, and those tornadoes have so much range that they are actually able to hit my gunner, my cannoneer, with all of the upgrades. Even with the Mythic Plus upgrade and this maxed out glove, they were still able to hit him. And so I had to find a way to deal with this, because if our cannoneer is getting thrown back all the time, of course, that means that we barely do any damage with him. And so this was my answer to deal with this. The Bastion Shields are luckily able to completely annihilate tornadoes, because tornadoes are considered a projectile in this game. And thus this itemate also works on this. That's also why I decided to take this blue banner wielder in here, because it increases the speed of my knights, and every time they're getting thrown around by tornadoes or some other ability of the dragon, they were then able to move faster up front again to the front line to tank for my cannoneer. Okay, but let's see this here in action. Let's go. One thing I want to edit here afterwards is that you must absolutely equip the right shoulder parts on your cannoneer against Storm Wyvern, because the Storm Wyvern has an ability which throws back magic projectiles at the attacker. And since our cannoneer already has a tremendous amount of damage, but only has a very few hit points, that means that the cannoneer itself can also one-hit itself with its own projectiles. So you have to make sure that you equip shoulder parts which grant physical damage for your dwarf and not ice, thunder, or fire damage. Okay, even though I already showed you everything I wanted to show you in this guide, actually the Storm Wyvern is not the last enemy. There is one more boss called the Forge Demon. And I want to at least show you my attempt to take down this beast. So the Forge Demon is absolutely unfair. The Forge Demon has 10 million HP. He comes in with enormous damage abilities. He summons chieftain orcs and champion orcs every 30 seconds. And if that wasn't enough, of course, he also, as all other bosses, starts to scale after 3 minutes in damage every second. And so the Forge Demon is absolutely unfair. And you can already see here in the background my formation at round 800. This is also not the formation I went down with. I went down against the Forge Demon, so I lost against the Forge Demon ultimately with my attempt to take him down with my thieves again. But here you can see that I also try to challenge him with paladins. And we still have our Beastmasters, we still have our supporters, our Cannoneer, our Archer, just to give you some more numbers here again. So both my Beastmasters had close to 15,000 HP. My Cannoneer, as I already said, made 4,000 damage per bullet. Same goes for my Archer. My Archer did like around 2,000 damage per bullet. My supporters were able to heal 1,000 HP per ultimate use, and they were able to ultimate every 2 seconds or so. So this was a crazy lineup. It was so easy to defeat every common orc round. I could have just continued with this for like 200, 300, 500 victories more without any problems. But yeah, the Forge Demon is absolutely unfair. Just have a look on this last clip. That's also it from my side for today. Thank you so much for joining in, and I hope to see you next time. If you liked what you see here, please let me know in the comments, and also this time I'm begging you to leave a thumbs up because I spent so much time on this, 80 hours plus only for this one video. So yeah, thank you for joining in, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye.